mother, wife,
Air Force veteran,
gun rights advocate.
This is Stacy on the Right. Here's your host, Stacy Washington.
Thank you for tuning in to Stacy on the Right here on SiriusXM. This is the Patriot Channel, and we're rocking and rolling to the end of our day and into tomorrow with great content, news, and information. Thanks for being with us. Follow me everywhere, Stacy on the Right, on especially Instagram and Twitter, Stacy on the Right Show on Facebook. Welcoming into the program, welcoming back Patrick M. Brenner, President and CEO of the Southwest Public Policy Institute. Thank you so much, Patrick, for coming back on.
Stacy, thanks for having me. I always enjoy coming on board your show. You lead the conversations so well and so nicely. It makes it really easy for me to talk about what we've done.
Well, thank you for that. I have to tell you, when you join us, you guys are always innovating and making it possible for people to understand some of the it's the kind of issues where you feel like you're cooking dinner, you got kids to put to bed, you don't have a lot of energy or time to put into things. And then SPPI comes in with one of their reports and you're like, oh, okay, that's I can understand that, I can digest that. And you're back with what you call your latest SPPI Swipe Right report. Tell us more.
Sure. Well, I think before we get into exactly what the report was, let's talk about where it came from, why it was necessary. Mm-hmm. It's a little aged. The issue that started this, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau launched a circular in February of 2024, and it was specifically directed at eliminating what is called digital intermediaries. These are lead generation platforms. These are the comparison shopping tools that we use every day. A digital intermediary is Google, using Google as a search engine for finding the least expensive product or being able to do different product comparisons on whatever you're shopping for. Digital intermediaries can be Expedia, it can be NerdWallet, it can be Credit Karma, it can be SitterCity.com. It could even be Bumble or Tinder if you're in the dating scene, and those are incredibly important tools that we Americans use on a daily basis. So the CFPB publishes a circular in 2024, and it's specifically targeting digital intermediaries, these comparison shopping tools. The CFPB, under the direction of former Director Rohit Chopra, decided that they wanted to eliminate comparison shopping tools across the United States. And this was the precursor to that maneuver.
But why?
So
why would they want to eliminate that?
There's a lot of different reasons that I think you could get into about why they wanted to eliminate it. But I think that they wanted to control the pipeline of consumers more than they were able to before the elimination of a digital intermediary like that. If you can't control the providers of financial products, or you can't control the supply of a product, the CFPB decided that it was going to target the demand for the product. If they could control the demand for goods and services, they could effectively control supply. So by attacking the pipeline of buyers, of consumers, they would have had a tremendous amount of power over the American marketplace. And well, what better way to attack the pipeline of consumers than going after big tech like Google? Although I don't think that they meant to cast as broad of a net as I believe they inevitably did.
So they basically precipitated, Credit Karma and NerdWallet, these are like, a lot of people really enjoy these services. Was there any allegation that they'd done something wrong? Like because oftentimes when government seeks to regulate or eliminate something, they have something that they can point to say, well, you did this, that's why we're coming after you.
There was an initial allegation that upset the overlords of the CFPB, and it was in preferencing and steering practices. Allegedly, some of these comparison shopping tools, these digital intermediaries, these lead generators were preferencing certain providers of certain products over others based on a financial incentive, meaning that since lead generators aren't actually providing products directly, but are more connecting consumers with suppliers, the argument was that the lead generators were being financially compensated to do that. And while that's certainly true in some situations, it's not always true. And we certainly did not find that to be the case in the swipe right experiment, where we decided to test the comparison shopping tools of NerdWallet and Credit Karma in the financial services space, specifically to test the viability of the product to determine whether or not it was a viable tool. I mean, people love talking about NerdWallet and Credit Karma, but I don't think I've ever seen a study done that actually analyzed the usefulness of the tool itself compared with the alternative of actually going out and applying to the individual card providers directly.
So without any of that research, it seems almost impossible that they would, seek to make a change without being able to kind of point to something tangible.
That's what we thought.
Huh. All right.
So enter swipe right. This was specifically to test whether or not lead generators, comparison shopping tools, digital intermediaries were useful to American consumers, and to test it from the perspective of the consumer. The last time we were on, I was on your station, your show. We talked about No Loan for You, and that was a study where we applied for some short-term small volume loan products in and outside of New Mexico at big banks and credit unions, and we took the same approach with Swipe Right, although we took it into more of a mainstream approach. These are credit cards, real live credit cards. I was looking specifically for a credit repair credit card. In the aftermath of the No Loan for You and No Loan for You 2 studies, my credit was decimated by about 100 points, and I needed a credit card to help improve my credit score. Naturally, a credit repair credit card would be a good choice. So I went out to NerdWallet and Credit Karma and LendingTree, and I used their search tools to find a credit repair credit card. And I also duplicated this study by going to the banks directly. Now, Google as a search engine is not necessarily a lead generator specifically for banks like Wells Fargo and Capital One. Rather, NerdWallet and Credit Karma, those are what we're considering the digital intermediaries through these products, because they're specifically built and tailored to connecting consumers with financial services products. In this case of Google, Google is more of a generic search engine as it applies to the study. So we used Google to find other credit repair credit cards, and we ended up in the hands of Wells Fargo, Capital One, a couple of other larger name brands. And we tried to apply directly to them, and we were not able to secure access to an additional line of credit through a new credit card. When we applied through NerdWallet and Credit Karma, we were actually connected directly with a small bank that I had not heard of before the study, Merrick Bank, and they approved us same day, within minutes, for a new $500 credit card and guaranteed an increase in credit on that credit card to $1,000, doubling that credit access if we were able to make the first, I think it was 3 monthly payments or 6 monthly payments on time.
Okay. So
and
that's good access.
What we found was that we got access. We got access to new credit. We got access to larger credit. And it saved us time and it saved us money, and it actually saved us points on my credit score because I wasn't out there applying for a dozen credit cards at a time trying to seek approval. Rather, with NerdWallet and Credit Karma, all I had to do was submit one application, and I got approved right away.
So the product works, and it's helpful. And so you now have a report that proves that. What happens next?
Well, I think the next step for us is to tell this story to the regulators across the country, to the politicians, the lawmakers, the lobbyists, the policy analysts, and make our case known that these lead generators and comparison shopping tools and digital intermediaries are all incredibly important in the 21st century American economy and this ecosystem in which we live today, especially when inflation is so high. Every dollar counts to every American family. And if they're using these shopping tools and lead generation platforms to seek low-cost goods and services, that tags their bottom line. A penny saved is a penny earned, am I right?
Yeah, I mean, yes, you're right. So what can we expect here? Are they still going to go ahead and destroy, something that's actually helpful, like, these two sites that you've listed off, Credit Karma and NerdWallet? Are they going to destroy them just because they can?
I don't think so. Not anymore, not with the new administration. I would like to see them pull back on that circular. I would like to see them reverse some of their policy-making initiatives and posturing. And I think that we're going to see that under the new administration. I was simultaneously incredibly pleased to see the dismissal of Rohit Chopra from his directorship at the CFPB. But I was also a little disappointed because I enjoyed picking on him so much. It was kind of a target-rich environment from my perspective.
So, but this is now, we now have a new administration, though. We have President Trump in office. We have, so he's actually moving to minimize at very least, or, optimally would eliminate the CFPB. So, I mean, would that help? Do we really need it? He
can't. Do we really need the CFPB? That's a good-looking question, and I don't want to answer it on live radio. Rather, I'd like to say that a minimized CFPB would certainly be a good thing. I don't think that Trump can eliminate the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau right without congressional approval.
Sure.
But because it's funded directly by the Federal Reserve, which was affirmed by the Supreme Court case decision that came out last year, that direct funding mechanism, he certainly has a lot more control over how the CFPB gets funded, and as such can restrict its funding, effectively minimizing it. But I don't think he'll be able to eliminate it. And he also needs to tread a little lightly, because what happens in 4 years, and the Democrats come back with a vengeance, possibly, and they'll beef up the CFPB again, and we'll be in a world of hurt.
Well, so the big deal here is that government has gotten so big and it's so drunk on its own power that it finds services that Americans find useful and are utilizing and serve a purpose. And it wants to get rid of those services, not because people have complained or asked for the services to be eliminated, but just because I guess they can and they need something to do. Maybe they haven't gotten their emails from Elon Musk asking them what they did this week, or maybe they plan to list destroying these two websites on their email. What did you do this week? We destroyed these two websites. Did anybody want you to? No, but that's not the point. This feels like kind of like theater, like a circus theater.
A little bit. A little bit. And it's not just Credit Karma and NerdWallet and LendingTree. It's not just those platforms that are under attack. And the lead generation space is a multi-billion-dollar industry, and it affects home buyers. It affects babysitters, electricians, plumbers. I mean, technically, I think even Uber, the rideshare app, considers itself a lead generation service. And that makes sense. When you actually break down what happens in a transaction with the Uber rideshare app, Uber is effectively just connecting a rider and a driver. And even from the perspective of a rider, if I go into the Uber app, there's a couple of different price points that I can choose. There's Uber X, there's Uber Black, there's Uber X Comfort. They're a comparison shopping tool in and of themselves a little bit. They're connecting you with those same drivers that offer the Uber X level of service. They're connecting you with the drivers that offer the Uber Black service. I mean, Uber is just one giant lead generator. That's it. I mean, that's their whole business model. Genius business model, support them, and good for them for being able to make that work. But what the CFPB would have done by the definitions that they came up with in this circular was so incredibly dangerous and would have threatened business models like that in perpetuity and would have prohibited additional tools like Uber and Lyft and Bumble and Tinder from coming online. It would have permanently damaged and harmed the financial fintech technology revolution and innovation that makes America as great as it is.
Well, and it feels like it's also kind of a chilling impact to those who have ideas and are starting up. There's startups like this all the time, apps, things like that. And a little idea can morph into an app or a website that can turn into, one of these huge sites, because the two services you've named and some of the others that you've listed off, they're all enormously popular and well used. So, it's a case of in the olden days, the 1800s and the 1900s, you would see a need and you would start a company. You'd rent a building, you'd rent an office, start it, hire people, and you'd be working, and there'd be something physical that you would be providing. But now so many of the offerings that we have come to rely on are digital in their nature. So they can be stood up faster and accessed faster, and they can grow a lot faster, and they can become kind of integral to what you're using. And I know people who like NerdWallet is their thing. They just use it before they open anything. They go there first. So it's not unusual to have something be very, very popular, but to me, it should be unusual to us as Americans to have the government sitting up, deciding what services we have access to based on their own, ideological whims. It just, it feels like something we should be doing away with.
Well, it's a little Big Brother-esque, I would think. Yeah. Not to get too dystopian. And we talked about this a little bit earlier in our conversation. Why was the CFPB making a maneuver like this? Why were they specifically targeting lead generators? Was it a complaint? Was it just a business model? It was specifically the steering practice. But at the same time that this circular came out, we saw some indicators that the CFPB was actually standing up a lead generation service of its own. And this lead generation service was competing directly with private sector solutions that already existed in the marketplace. Again, pointing back to Credit Karma and NerdWallet and LendingTree and everybody else that does this. The government was competing directly with the private sector, or at least that they were planning to.
Well, I think the work that you're doing is exactly the balm that we need to push back this ridiculousness by this agency that, I understand it takes an act of Congress to get rid of it because it took an act of Congress to stand it up. I would hope that our congressional members would understand that getting rid of the CFPB would be helpful to American consumers and taking any of its functions that are actually useful and, dole those back to agencies that already exist. A reduction in agency and headcount is beneficial to taxpayers and consumers. I feel like that's something that could be done, but there's been so much pushback from the left on even the simplest acts of reconciliation and, cost cutting. So I don't know if this is on President Trump's agenda beyond what he's already said, but I think your report is very, very helpful in demonstrating just how out of control this is. I'm glad you made the Swipe Right report. I want everyone to know you can go to southwestpolicy.com, and read the report for yourself. Maybe you decide to share it, put it on some of the groups that you're in or on Facebook or wherever you have accounts and share it. And you can also subscribe to email updates from SPPI. I think that's a great idea as well. Thank you so much for the report and for joining us tonight to talk about it.
Stacy, it was a pleasure as always. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk with me, and let's do it again soon.
Absolutely. We really appreciate your work over at Southwest Public Policy Institute. It's southwestpolicy.com, everyone. You can find out more. Thank you so much for the great information here.